Hi, I'm Professor Lee Jensen, and today we're going to be talking about deliverable number 2, automated deployment. In the last deliverable, you did a manual deployment, which is awesome. I mean, you can get something out there statically deployed really nicely and easily, but there's several problems with that. First of all, it's slow. You got to manually do a whole bunch of steps, and remembering what all those steps are and clicking on them and doing them just takes time, which you don't want to be doing that when you're trying to do rapid, agile development process where you're getting your product out to your development team to actually have them review it, or even to a production environment where your customer wants it. You want it out there as quickly as possible. Second problem is that it's error prone. Doing all those manual steps, it's really easy to miss one, forget a parameter on it, deploy it to the wrong place. And when that happens, systems go down, customers get really cranky, and that's not something that you want to have happen. You want to make it as automated as possible. That's the catchphrase of DevOps, is automate everything. Third problem is that it's non-reproducible. Like, you go through all these manual steps, you miss one, you don't know how to go back and look and see what exactly you missed. Or even worse, you come back to do it a week or two later and you don't remember what those steps were. And so you can't ever reproduce what you actually did. So an automated deployment using a continuous integration pipeline, like we're going to do today, solves the problem of being slow, error prone, and makes it completely reproducible. So the tool that we're going to use is GitHub Actions. This is an automated CI pipeline tool, which allows you to execute a bunch of scripts in a Docker container to execute a standard process every time to get your code actually out there. So if you go look at our diagram, we're going to take it from where we were tweaking things in a GitHub branch down here, committing them, and then the pages was noting that some special thing happened in that branch and it would automatically deploy the pages. Instead, we're going to remove that branch and not use it anymore. You're going to commit directly to your main branch, and when you push that up to GitHub, it's going to notice that changes happen, automatically execute a Docker container, which can run whatever process you want to actually build, test, make sure your code looks right. And if everything goes well, then it's going to finally deploy that to the environment that you want. In our case, we're deploying that to GitHub Pages. So it's pretty simple to actually do this. And if you follow the instructions we have here in deliverable number 2, it'll step you through all of these things here. But the first thing you want to do is to change it over from being triggered by a change to a branch, a Git branch, to being triggered by your GitHub action. So if we go over to our repository, so this is my student example repository, BYU CS student. You're going to go to yours, and you're going to go to your settings, and you're going to go to the GitHub pages, and you're going to change it from this setting, which is deploy from a branch, to actually deploy from GitHub Actions. Now that's going to get rid of your option to actually specify which branch you're going to use, because you're not going to be using those branches anymore. So that's completely gone there, and that's all you got to do. You say, I want it to be based upon GitHub Actions. And when the GitHub action executes, that knows how to deploy to GitHub Pages, then it's going to automatically deploy the repository's information there. Your website is still found in the same place. You don't have to worry about your domain names changing or anything. You're just changing over from the branch to be actions. Okay, that's the first step. The next thing you need to do is actually go over to your command console. And you can see I'm still here on the GitHub Pages branch from before. You definitely don't want to execute anything from there from now on. So I'm going to go ahead and do a git checkout main. And then I'm going to open up the code that I have here. This is the source code for Jot Pizza by using the console command line. If you've set that up with VS Code, really easy to do. So that if I do dot, it'll open up the current directory as the project directory. So I can go ahead and open that up. And then I'm going to come here and I'm going to follow the steps that are indicated in the documentation. So if I come back, head on over to the documentation, you can see that I'm going to create a file in the .github workflows directory named CI-YAML. And I'm going to paste in this big block of code, which is your continuous integration pipeline. So let's go ahead and do that now. I'm going to come over here and go up to the top of the project, and I'm going to create a folder. It's going to be called .github/workflows/ci.yaml. And open up that file. There we go, now we're good. And I'm going to toggle back over to the instruction, and I'm going to copy this whole pipeline over here. Then we're going to go through it and actually look at it to explain what all these steps are actually doing. But let's paste it in here and actually scroll up to the top. So the first thing that you're going to see in this file is that you give it the name. So when GitHub Actions actually executes your pipeline, it's going to display this is the name of what's going on there. The next thing is when this pipeline is actually triggered to execute. So that's the on, and it's on pushes of the branch main. So whenever you push code that changes the branch main, then it's going to execute this pipeline. There is also another trigger here, which is the workflow dispatch. What that means is that within the GitHub Actions interface, up on the web interface, there's going to be a button there for your pipeline that you can push manually anytime that you want. So if you want to execute your pipeline again for any reason and don't want to change the code to actually execute that pipeline, then you just go ahead and push that button and this will trigger. Underneath what triggers it is our information about what jobs there are within here. We've got two jobs. We've got a build job and we also got a deploy job. So first we're going to build the code, and if that all succeeds fine, then we're going to deploy the code. So in our build job, there's a few different instructions given here. First of all, that we want to run our Docker container on the latest version of Ubuntu. And I'm going to output from this job a version number, which represents the version of the binary that was, or the package that was created from this job. The first step that it does is actually checks out the code. So it's checking out, it's doing a git clone into the Docker container that has just spun up on its runner. And then it's going to install Node.js using version 20. Future versions of this course, this is not going to be version 20. So, just ignore the fact that I'm talking about it in the video here and use the right version that's specified in the script. Next thing it does is it creates a version number that's going to be inserted into the product. Whenever you're building a continuous integration deployment or continuous deployment, you always want to make sure that you brand your binaries or your package with some descriptive SKU or identifying number, a version number, which allows you to know, okay, this code actually matched to this thing that was given to the user. In our case, we're just using a bash command to create a simple version based upon a date. So it's got the month, year, month, date, hours, minutes, and second. Combining that into a variable, and then we're echoing that out to both our output, which gets stuck into the output for the job. That's what that gets put in there. And the second thing is that we're printing that out to a file using a JSON syntax, and that file is going to be in the public directory and be version.json. And that's where the code, the actual Jot pizza code, is looking for that version file, and it's going to display that within the interface. Okay. Then it actually builds bundles the package using Vite. So we first install all of our dependencies, that installs Vite and everything else we need in there. And then it actually runs the build command to use Vite to bundle up everything and create our distribution directory, which has our bundled package in it. We also play our little game that we played back in our manual deployment to copy over the index.html into the 404 HTML so that the DOM router knows how to handle when there is a request on a page that isn't actually the one that would normally load up the index.html. Same game we're playing there, we're just playing it in an automated fashion instead of having you execute it from a command line. The final thing that it does is it uploads the artifact, so it takes whatever's in the dist directory and creates this little zip file that it stores away within the GitHub Actions pipeline so that you can reference that in a later job, which we're going to do here in just a minute. This is a special step. It knows that it's creating a pages artifact that can be deployed directly to GitHub Pages. Then our deployment job says you've got to finish the build job before you do it. If you don't have that in there, then it's going to try and execute them concurrently, which isn't going to work very well because you can't deploy unless you actually build first. So it needs some permissions because we're going to write to the pages. So it's going to say you are giving it permissions to write to GitHub Pages, and this ID token permission to write allows it to act on your behalf. So then it sets up the environment, which is just a collection of configuration information for this job to actually execute under. And this one's going to create one called GitHub Pages and display the URL of the output that it's going to there. And all of your artifacts and everything go into that environment. So that's why it's being set there for that. And then it runs on just like we did before, Ubuntu latest, and it's just going to execute one step, which is a really magical, powerful actions called deploy pages, which looks for our uploaded pages artifact, grabs that thing, uses the permissions that you've just given it to write to GitHub Pages, and copies those files right out to the CDN that GitHub uses to actually display your artifacts or your static website to the entire world. And that's basically the whole thing. Now, we don't have to do anything really special other than just tell GitHub Pages, like we just did a few minutes ago, that we want to deploy with GitHub Actions. So that gives us the authorization for this thing to actually execute well. And now all we've got to do is just come here and actually commit this. So we're going to deploy our new CI pipeline using Actions. And we're going to push the commit button here and push that up to GitHub. And if I toggle over to my GitHub interface now, and we're looking here at my student account, and then I go to the Actions tab, you'll see that my commit there has already initiated the execution of the workflow. So that thing's already running. There's 2 steps. Right now it's working on the build step. So if I navigate into that, you can see each one, 2 jobs. You can see each one of the steps within the job executing. It already set the version number, it did the build, it's put my artifact up there, and while I'm talking, we're already off to the deploy, and before I even get done here, it's going to be really close to being done with the deployment. So it's spinning up the container, and it's deploying to GitHub Pages, and in a few seconds, it's off and running, and now it's cleaning up that thing, and we're done with the job. So if I actually go look at my website now, my website that I set up before with my custom domain name, the only thing that's going to actually tell me that I've deployed a new version is if this version number down here at the bottom has actually changed. So right now it's ending in 21. It's the 21th hour in UTC time, 42 minutes and 9 seconds. So if I refresh this right now, hopefully that will actually change. And there you go. So now we're up to 22 hours, 5 minutes and 17 seconds is my new version number, showing me that my deployment pipeline actually worked. Awesome. We're like 99% of the way there. Let's go see what all we have to do in order to make this work. So if I go down to the rubric, I do need to do a successful deployment using GitHub Actions. Check. I need to make sure that the version is updated in the footer. Yep, check. And then I need to make sure that the functionality for JWT Pizza is working on our custom domain. Yep, we did that. We can also go here and navigate to a page like the order page and do a refresh and make sure that that DOM routing is still working. Check, that all looks good there. I'm missing one thing though. I'm not going to get 5% unless I change it so that there's a pipeline status badge displayed on the README file of the home page. Okay, so I must have missed something in the instruction. Let's go back up. And here they're saying that you can add this magic little markdown into your README file, and it will automatically display this pipeline, CI pipeline passing or not passing little badge in the README file. I like that. So let's go see what our thing actually looks like right now. So if I come back up here, go to code, display the README, all I've got right now is this coverage thing, which we're going to fix and fill out later when we actually start doing some testing on our code base, but I don't have that badge there. So what exactly is this thing? Let's copy it and do what it's instructing me to do. So I'm going to go back over to our code, and we're going to go hit the README file, which is right here. And right underneath where it's specifying where that coverage badge is coming in, I'm just going to paste that in there. And you can see that it's like accessing some sort of magic directory in the GitHub, your account name. So I need to change that. I'm going to do a multi-select edit there and do BYUCS student right there is my account name. And then it's going to the pizza repository and looking at our action workflow, and the CI YAML directory, there's going to be some sort of magic badge there. So GitHub Pages is doing something, magic in the background. It's creating this little image for me every time the pipeline is executed. If it executes successfully, it's going to have, passing or green on there. If it doesn't execute successfully, then it's going to show an error on there. And that allows my users to know whether or not the last build that actually happened was successful or not, so that they can know whether or not they can trust the state of the current code. If it's not green, then the code is not actually compiling. Maybe the tests aren't building or something like that. If it is green, then they know that, okay, they're at least deployed to like some staging environment or something like that, and the code is actually good. So I'm going to just save that. So I'm going to go over to GitHub controls right now, and I can see that README file is there, and I can go ahead and just put this information in here. So I'm going to enhance README with CI result. Okay, I'm going to commit that and push that up. And if I then toggle back over to my student repository example again, and we head on over to our actions, we should see that once again, we're executing. And as soon as that finishes executing, then we'll actually be able to see our badge appear within the README file, completing the last little check mark of what we actually got to do. So let's click on this and see how it's doing. Okay, it finished the build job. It's working on the deployment job. Just have a couple seconds here before that actually gets done. While that's happening, I'm going to go ahead and navigate back over to the code. And we're going to go into our Jot Pizza repository and see the README file right here. And if I scroll down, you can see it finished, and we've actually got our little badge displaying. The CI pipeline is passing. So everything's awesome. We can go back to our instructions and see that we completed the last 5% of it. Check, 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 check. And we've completed a deliverable number 2. Thanks for watching.